Good evening.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
I'll give a pause by saying just good evening. We can all hold hands and think positive thoughts tonight.
There you go.
Just the 4 years. We're just talking 4 years, right? So welcome to the Dave Show Midstream Reading Series. I'm Diane, Jarvenpa. In case you need bathrooms, they're just down, take a right, take another right, and you'll find it. So glad to see you all. The series tradition is to go around the room and say your name and what your connection to writing might be, whether it's a reader or a writer or whatever. So we're going to start right there.
I'm Paul Mattis, and I'm a poet and one of the hosts.
I'm Frank Hudson. I've written poetry for decades, but for the last 9 years, my project has been the Parlando Project, where I combine literary poetry that wasn't meant to be sung or performed with original music and put it out for people to hear and write about my experience of the words.
I'm Michael Moose. I'm a poet, a longtime fan of Freya Manfred's poetry, and looking forward to hearing that voice again.
Me too. I'm Jim Lundfesty, and my third book from Milkweed's coming out next week on Thursday. Be there at Clipper Congregation, sponsored by The Loft and by Milkweed and by Literary Witnesses. 7 o'clock, and you'll have a good time.
We need
I'll have a good time.
Kathy Davis. I'm his biggest fan, my husband Al. Glad to be here and excited to hear what he'll read.
I'm Alan Davis. I'm reading tonight. I'm a fiction writer. I'm happily retired from teaching and editing, which means I can say I'm a full-time writer.
Bravo.
I'm Mark Walker, one of the co-hosts for this series. I'm a poet.
I'm Paula named Carol, and I'm a poet.
Good to see you.
I'm Kim Chapman, write poems and essays.
I'm Lon Otto. I'm a fiction writer.
Betsy Collins Demeray. I'm a reader and a friend of Freya.
Lora Robinson. I'm one of the other readers, and I'm a grant writer, which pays about as much as poetry.
I'm Michael Tate. Laura's my sparkling girlfriend, and when I was in middle school at writer's camp, I had my first kiss.
I'm Erin Van Heel, and I'm a friend of Laura's, an enthusiastic reader of poetry and prose.
Hi, I'm Bailey. I'm a writer and an editor. I edited Jim's book. I didn't realize Jim would be here.
Oh, she did a great job.
Bailey. I didn't have to do
Bailey,
much.
what a delight.
I'm Karen Sandberg. I'm a poet who has a book just come out in July this year, and I also write fiction and other things. I can find the time.
I'm Tim Young. I'm a poet and a podcaster of things that are written.
I'm Ann True. I'm a writer of mostly journal writing and poetry. And I'm a twin, and I love Freya's book about her sons. And I also, I loved your book about your father. And I love your poetry. First of all, I love your poetry. And I love your, I have that, you read at the University Club a few years, it was a while ago, I say a few years, but it was with Robert Bly and a few other poets, and the poem about the turtles is kind of, gives me hope every day.
Oh, wow.
I'm Narita Zipper Jackson. I'm a writer and a reader of poetry.
I'm Sharon Schmielers. Hello, Al Davis.
Hey,
Sharon.
Sharon. Good to see you. Thank you.
I'm Wes Jordy, and I write some poetry.
I'm Tom Pope. I'm a retired screenwriter and retired from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. But my real claim to fame is on Freya Manfred's husband.
Oh, looks like you were shot. Never mind.
Thank you, I'm very glad to be here. Freya, my name.
I'm Brent Lora, I'm a friend of Lora's. I'm mostly a reader and I dabble in journal writing, little poetry, but I'm really well known for my work emails.
Well, welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'm just going to read one little poem. William Ryford couldn't make it tonight. He wasn't feeling well, so you're going to have these wonderful writers even longer than we thought. But I'll just read one quick little poem first, and then we'll get to them. I think we all need quite a few versions of this title coming up. Survival Kit. If I was asked to say right here, right now, what I would like today, I would stop short, not used to such questions. Soul frost with ice splinters have gathered in long stalactite layers. So to begin with, I would say tea. I would like tea and bread, a day with sun, a modest pile of books, a chair to sink into and not be afraid. Slow the fierce horse of pain and pick up something with strings that sounds a lunar note. Link loss to a new map that legends contradictions. And these contradictions would be acknowledged for their unique character and mystery. The same way we walk through those national parks, thinking them beautiful, though large at times, holding many hidden trails. I would set loose shame, though it can be a tricky business. It's not really like lifting a cage latch and letting bird feet push off from an open pair of hands. But I've heard it feels that focused, that fragile. I would name suffering and fold it into origami. Some days I would rather use my hands for making paper herons, the fugue of those ever tinier triangles, small sharp wounds into small sharp blooms. Take the broken pieces of this world and fit them into a new algebra of green hills with trees. Finally, tell my story in the only way I can tell it, leaving the afterword for another day.
Beautiful.
Many survival kits needed. I would like to, well, I'm going to go in this order and I didn't even tell you. So Freya Manfred's 10th book of poetry is When I Was Young and Old from Noden Press. Her poems have appeared in over 100 reviews in magazines and anthologies. Her memoir, Frederick Manfred, A Daughter Remembers, was nominated for a Minnesota Book Award and an Iowa Historical Society Award. And her second memoir is Raising Twins, A True Life Adventure, Noden Press. Her children's chapter book, available tonight, The Fuminous Rex, the Outcast Cat, is just out from Noden Press. Please welcome Freya Manfred.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me, Diane.
Oh, anytime, Freya.
You can read my poems anytime too.
I'd love to.
Aloud, I mean. I just want to read poems from two books tonight. The most recent one, When I Was Young and Old, which I'm sure all of you mostly are young and old too. There's a couple of you that are just young and young, I can tell. And then I want to read a little bit from the book that came before that. It's called Loon in Late November Water. I write a lot of poems about water and the outdoors, and so I'll just begin with Loon. This is for old friends whom I see in the room tonight. It's been published a lot, so I'm lucky that people like it. Old friends. Old friends are a steady spring rain or late summer sunshine edging into fall, or frosted leaves along a snowy path. A voice for all seasons saying, I know you. The older I get, the more I fear I'll lose my old friends, as if too many years have scrolled by since the day we sprang forth seeking each other. Old friend, I knew you before we met. I saw you at the window of my soul. I heard you in the steady millstone of my heart, grinding grain for our daily bread. You are sedimentary, rock-solid cousin earth, where I stand firmly, astonished by your grace and truth. And gratitude comes to me and says, tell me anything, and I will listen. Ask me anything, and I will answer you. Hi, you guys, there's places around, I think in the back, somewhere you gals and guys. Oh, there's some up here. It's a desperately good place to be up here. The next poem I want to read from here is about my husband's father, Henry Pope, and he was in World War II, and recently we had a day for all of the people who fought in wars. This is sort of a prosy-like poem. It's called The White House Requests the Pleasure of Your Company, because Henry had been invited to come there briefly to meet the president at one point. When you wrote, friends and fellow poets, asking me to submit a poem or statement of conscience for a reconstituted Poets Against the War movement, or I was not at home with the deep diving loons of Minnesota, or anywhere near the Iron Range lakes and forests I love. My husband and I were in the chemical outback of New Jersey. We're cleaning toilets and cooking soup made with a stock of old steak bones for my father-in-law, a decorated colonel in the Philippines, World War II, who recalls those battles and his men as clearly now as he remembers his own family, and often says that war was the formative experience of his life. He's 86 and bent, but I submit that when I asked him how he felt about the president's proposed attack on Iraq, he said, lifting his proud hawk nose over the steam of the soup, the kitchen light deepening the scar on his forehead, if you think we were not always afraid, you're wrong. If you think we didn't watch out for each other, think again. We had the whole world behind us, and it was not enough. I thought that was an amazing thing.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing guy.
Where we are now.
This next poem from a loon is, it's called Walking on Eggshells. There's a whole book about it. It's called Walking on Eggshells too. I remember reading it years ago. And there was a family member that I always had trouble with my whole life, and my whole life has gone on since then. So whatever. I learned a lot trying to understand this family member. I probably, when I did talk to a therapist, talked to that therapist about this person more than any other person on the planet. In other words, it was hard for me to, anyway. So it starts with a quote from Henry James' letters. Remember that every life is a special problem which is not yours but another's, and confront yourself with the terrible algebra of your own. And walking on eggshells. Careful what you do or say, or they'll slam the door in your face. You've crossed some line where pain and madness rule. Now, this and the rest of it is kind of how I felt. I knew right away who we had as president when he came down the elevator for the first time. I knew who we had as president right away because of the experiences I had with this person. Careful what you say or do, or they'll slam the door in your face. You've crossed some line where pain and madness rule. Anything could happen. They'll leap in front of a truck, fall from a bridge, plunge a knife in their heart, or glass to their wrist. Or the show could go on forever, a play you'll never exit, until you feel so numb you fear you'll become a stone. You have no power to change anyone, so there's no escape from the bottom of this sea, and no navy to rescue you. But one way out is to accept that you'll always care. You just refuse to wait for the next sneak attack. So let go. And when they die, will you visit their grave? After you visit the graves of those who were tender and kind? No one can make the answer. No. No one can make you their savior or mourner except you. And you've swallowed enough guilt and lasting sorrow. Amen to that. I just have one other poem I would like to read from this book. I decided to read this one, even though it's really stupid to read it because it's no longer true. But I will, read a poem to counteract it. I promise you. I promise Tom in particular. This poem is called "Strangle Him." How did she know she could strangle him? She's done it in her dreams. Hands at his throat, thumbs in the dents above his tender clavicles. If he were a sexy rock star, she'd still strangle him. Yes, even if he were a town hall hero, a man who gives so much to his community. If he were president, pastor, paratrooper, or paragon, lowly sheep herder, or cattleman, or the man with the hoe, she would still, damn it, strangle him. What if he were a transcendent, transgender astronaut with knowledge of every star, sun or planet, and all those lovely, lovely and lonely moons? Well, too bad. Or what if he were a hunchback, rowing her across the river Styx amid the steady creak of oars and the choking black smoke of danger? She'd still have to strangle him, since so many have struggled to make this crossing before her. None strangers to the death or near death of love. And if the boat tips and she falls into the seductive wintry waters, infused with earth's last best tears, she'll leap out and swim for shore, not alone, not lost. Let's make this trip together, she'll cry, and take our chances on the wild raging waves with our hands on our friendly, faithful hearts. So yes, she can and will strangle him and put an end to this ageless wrestling match. Before death or after, she'll strangle him. It's very strange. If you're very angry, if you're very angry, you can write this poem, or else the last one about the eggshells is even more angry. So here are some poems from this new book, When I Was Young and Old. And I gotta make sure I don't read too long. I think I already read for 5 minutes.
No worries.
To start the book, I wrote this. It's called In a Sad Time, What Do I Desire? In a sad time, what do I desire? I want to laugh, a liquid laugh, every gurgling morsel of me cascading like water over singing stones. Laugh until my heart and lungs are empty, and go on laughing until I'm well fed and fall in love with everything. Let go of my place and my body in that place, and surrender to non-stop gasps, giggles, chortles, and chuckles. Laugh until I cry and discover the sapphires tumbling from my eyes are tears rising from the deep sea of hope and sorrow. Laugh, because the more I remember and then forget, the more I will be free. This is another poem that is probably the poem that means most to me in many times in this book. It's called Near You. My constant desire is for closeness now. Before the setting sun lights the far shore for the last time, I want to share fleeting and long-lasting truths, newly discovered or left unspoken long ago. Truths told in plain words, worth more than facts and figures or dazzling speeches. I crave a conversation as fresh as a swallow of water, with an enduring spirit that keeps us alive. Something to believe in, even when we tell the truths we sometimes fear to hear. Shared true heart moments are the light of this universe. They tell us what we do here on earth is all that matters, because we meet death every day, if we have no truths to hold close and give away. So that's what the truth and lying. The truths and the liars, the truth tellers and the liars. This is called At 70 He Plants a Tree. At 70 he plants a tree. After we chose a tree, he dug a hole, first with a shovel, then with his bare hands, through dirt, clay, and rocks as big as fists, kneeling on a scrap of cardboard to protect his knees, sweat streaming down his grimy shirt. And after he set the little cedar in place, surrounded the roots with black soil, and watered again, he stood up and came inside, groaning, but also sighing happy, and drew off his sodden clothes and showered and stretched out on our bed and fell asleep. And everything he'd done to plant that tree, to guard our north-facing front door, was so arduous I could not do it myself. Not anymore, now that I'm only good for a stroll, a languid swim, or cooking soup for dinner. I felt as if he'd finally given birth, when so far I've always been the only mother here. I thought that tree was close to a miracle, and I showed it to our sons, who were pleased and even proud. They nodded and approved as if they were our doting parents. I could see that they planned to plant their own trees, like their father, this hardy man in league with earth. Air, water, and the hard-earned promise of growth. It terrified me to see how strong some people can be. I can only celebrate by loving all of them with every bit of wrinkled bark and sweet sap left in my aging brain and veins. So that's, you can be very strangle people and be Lora on planting trees. I don't know, time passes. Okay, I read that one already. There's a couple more I want to read, and I'd like to read a quick, the shortest prose piece in this. I've finally been able to get some prose into my poem. I like prose better than poetry, by the way, but I can't ever seem to get it published as well, like some of you. So I do want to end with that, but here's a poem I wrote. Talk about this. It's called If the Dead Could Vote. And it's got the quote at the beginning by Donald Trump. Dead people voted, and I think the number is close to 5,000 people. Actual quote. If the dead could vote, no one could stop them, whether they flew down from heaven or rose up from hell. Their voices would sound like wind flowing through our hustling streets and hushed valleys. Most of us would not see them until we're near death or preparing to emerge from our mother's wombs. Whatever our votes might be, even if we all agree, the dead would easily outnumber us and win. They might vote to send us back to our birthright, to the truth of human loneliness and passion, and the gift of living in a land we love, that lies between what we make of heaven or of hell. So that's how I finished that one. Let's see, I think, I just read, I don't really understand that poem, so I think I should read one I understand. This is, you know, some other time I'll read that. Here's how to find a new friend, and then I want to read a little prose piece. Is that okay? Yeah. How to find a new friend. Many of our friends have died, Tom's and mine, and many of yours, I'm sure, passed away too. Again, not if you're young and young, but maybe even if you're young and young, this happened to you. How to find a new friend. Don't forget how lost you felt when your old friends died, and try to believe in laughter again. Don't think too long or too hard about anything, or brood about what you remember or forget. Whether you feel joy, sadness, anger, or fear, move closer until you feel breath like music on your skin and peace in your heart where food and shelter live. Help others when you can and let them help you. And don't worry about heaven or hell. It's what you do and say here that matters most. If you travel my way, don't trust that I'm good with words. They have escaped me all my life, and I can't speak or write as clearly as I wish. I hope that before I die, I'll find time to float in a lake with the ones I love, saying nothing that hasn't already been said. Well, that's it for that. I want to read a prose poem about my grandma Shorba. I envy all of you who are grandmothers and grandfathers. I think it's a great role. My grandma was so wonderful that I would like to be a grandmother because I learned so much from her. But anyway, we'll see how that goes too. She lived in Minneapolis, down near, her father was a bartender actually, in the Seven Corners area for many years. That was not her father, her grandfather was a bartender in Seven Corners. Very popular in the neighborhood. Grandma Shorba. Grandma's name was Mary Shorba, and she was Mom's mother. She lived in the bottom floor of a duplex near the University of Minnesota, and as far as I could see, she loved every single thing I ever said or did. She never made me feel guilty, or too young or too old or too mad or too sad. She said she couldn't get enough of me, and that she was happy as a lark when I came to stay, because I always helped her look for her eyeglasses, and ran errands when her legs were hurting. I have trouble walking because a car ran over me and broke nearly every bone in my body when your mother was only 2, Gram said. And she pulled up her dress to show me the crescent-shaped scars on the insides of her knees. I was laid up in the hospital for 6 months, and in all that time, I didn't set eyes on your mother, my darling Mariana. She had to go and live with my parents. Couldn't she come and visit you in the hospital? Oh, young children were barred from hospitals in those days because of diseases. When I got out, your mom didn't recognize me at first. Well, why did the car run over you? Why? Gracious me. A bunch of men were driving around drunk, and they started whistling and yelling at me as I was walking along the sidewalk. I kept walking, I tried to ignore them, but the driver ran his car over the curb and knocked me flat. Oh. Lord above, my bones were sticking out through my shins. So when Grandma and I ventured out into the city, we avoided long walks, and we sat on streetcars as much as possible, because Grandma's right leg was bowed out and her left leg was bent too far forward, so she walked all cockeyed, rocking back and forth like a boat on rough water. Sometimes, lying curled back to back with Grandma under the soft flannel sheets on the old brown couch she made into a bed at night, I wondered what my life would have been like if Grandma had died when the car full of drunken men hit her. Then I imagined my 5'1" Grandma lying under the heavy wheels, bones sticking out of her shins, and rivers of blood pouring from her heart. Grandma had never actually mentioned blood pouring from her heart, but that was the image I had as I fell asleep with my eyes fixed on a tiny red cloth heart hanging on a red ribbon that was draped over the corner of a photo of Grandma's only son, George Shorba. George had died in a motorcycle accident a few days after his 15th birthday, and Grandma and I looked at his photo every night before bed, and after a moment of silent, heavy breathing, Grandma's tears began rolling down her cheeks onto the front of her nightgown. He was my dear sweet boy, and so my heart is broken forever. But I'm so thankful every day that you and Maria and Freddie are whole and healthy. Jesus loves little girls like you, but he shouldn't take you away like he took George. Why did he take George? Because George was always too good for this world. God forgive me. Forgive you for what? You didn't kill George. No, but he begged me for a birthday motorcycle and I bought it for him. The instrument of his passing. I remember she called it the instrument of his passing. I can only pray for forgiveness. May God help me and forgive me. God already loves you, I said, so he has to forgive you, so don't worry. When you're sad, you can come and stay with me in my lilac house. You can stay as long as you want with me and Waggles. Waggles? Yeah, the neighbor's dog. He's now one of my best friends, and so are you. Oh my, Grandma said, and she burst into tears again and started to laugh at the same time. It was great. I was so happy she cried and laughed at the same time whenever she felt like it, because then, of course, I could do the same thing whenever I wanted. Grandma hugged and kissed me, then turned her face to the wall and began to snore. I could feel her back quivering against mine, and her loving heart beating less than a foot away from my healthier, younger heart. I fell asleep, praying to every god and imaginary being I'd ever heard of. Jesus, Wakantanka, Buddha, Peter Pan, and all the elves and fairies that lived in the woods and the waters. To make Grandma feel better, I hoped they would all get together to find a way to mend my Grandma's heart. Hello to all your grandmothers and grandfathers.
Thank you, Freya. I would be happy as a lark if you came to visit me. And I often read old friends, and if the dead could vote, to my students a lot. They're shared songs and important, so thank you for reading them tonight. So I have a little bit of a relationship with Al Davis in that he was part of a couple of books that were published of mine through New Rivers Press. So it's always fun to see Al. We don't see each other very often. Al Davis has published 3 prize-winning collections of short fiction, Rumors from the Lost World, Alone with the Owl, and So Bravely Vegetated, and co-edited Visiting Bob, poems inspired by the life and work of Bob Dylan, and 10 editions of American fiction, the best unpublished short stories by emerging writers. Professor Emeritus at Minnesota State, he also taught at the University of North Carolina, Fairfield University's MFA program, and the University of Southern Maine's Stone Coast MFA program. He is the recipient of the Loft McKnight Award of Distinction in Creative Prose, a Minnesota State Arts Board Fellowship, a Fulbright to Slovenia, and a Fulbright Hayes Grant to Indonesia. Please welcome Al Davis.
Thanks, Diane, for inviting me. It's good to see some familiar faces out there. Good to see people I haven't met before. Hopefully after the reading we'll have a chance to visit. When Diane invited me, we were talking or texting, and I thought, wow, we're going to be celebrating tonight. And I'm going to be able to say my new book, Clouds of the Mountains of the World, is what would have happened in this country if the other guy had won. So it's a very dark book. It's dystopian. The main plot is about a mother and daughter trying to find each other. but it's a novel in stories. So throughout the book, you meet a host of other characters. Usually, if the other characters are primary in a story, the main characters, the mother, daughter, the grandmother, and this single male character who's recurring, Heimlich, named after the maneuver that saves people, and he's always trying to save people. They come and go, but the main story is about Serena, the daughter, and Ava, the mother, who's gone AWOL, MIA, has her own very severe problems in a very violent world. So it's a dystopian society, and I'm going to read a story about, well, actually, I'm going to read a lighter story. I was going to read one of the darker stories if we were celebrating. But we're not. So I'm going to read a story that's a little lighter. Somebody just reviewed the book last week, and a young woman, and she said, "This book makes Cormac McCarthy's The Road seem like a walk in the park." So keep that in mind. If you buy the book, I do have some copies available. If you like dark literature, this is kind of dark. Another person, a filmmaker, James Edmund, reviewed it last week before last, and he said, no, he reviewed it the day after the election, or a few days after the election. I guess it was just a few days ago. I just saw it recently. He said this novel is becoming less fictional by the minute. Anyway, this one is called Election Day, and the narrator is a non-recurring character, but Ava, who's one of the protagonists in the book, appears right away, and she's in the story. I'll read it. I'll read about 20 minutes of it, and we'll see how it goes. Election Day. "Did you vote?" the mysterious Ava said. She had a bright orange sticker stuck to the sweater over her left nipple. "I voted," it said. She had come to the barbecue with our neighbor Bobby, whether as a long-lost friend returned from the Boundary Waters, where Bobby intimated some terrible things had occurred. That's from chapter 3, this is chapter 4. Or as a newfound lover, I had no idea. Time would tell, it always does. Vote? There's an election today? I was having her on, of course. I knew there was an election. Everybody told me it was important, that it would change everything if the wrong creep got into office. You registered, she said? I was dumbfounded. How could any responsible citizen decide not to vote or pretend not to understand what was at stake? Did she ever stop to think that my vote might neutralize hers? Or was she having me on? There was a furious light in her blue eyes. She glowed as if on fire with rail-thin luminosity. She had survived a long recovery after the Boundary Waters, Bobby had warned, and could be very, very brittle. That much Bobby told us as prelude to our gathering. I'm bringing her along with trepidation. Give her slack. It's her first outing in a long while. Of course I'm registered, I said. Who do you take me for? I voted. I could tell you who for. It's still a free country despite the mess, the violence, the New World Order, the militias, the marauders. The ballot is still secret. I'm secret too. You can't know about me. We stood on the porch that faced my next door neighbor Park's large bur oak, a majestic tree that could outlive not only election day, but all of us who presently walk the earth. Ava was very easy on my eyes, but her own ocean blue ones stared deep at everything around her as if she thought she had X-ray vision. I nursed a gin and tonic and thought about politics. There was a lot to think about. Things to curse, things to praise, people who should be shot, a few worth celebrating. I could have ranted and raved, and I knew that eventually I would do so, but I decided I would hold off as long as possible. I thought I would wend my way inside later in the evening after our guests were gone, and turn on the television to study the election results and curse if needed, shout with delight if things turned out good. My friend Denzel and his wife Letitia drove into the driveway on the other side of the house, and my wife, Louise, greeted them with a happy shriek. I grimaced. I wanted to say something to her about that shriek, which had become more frequent of late, but she would be offended. Everything offended her if it wasn't straight out praise. So I kept quiet and kept the peace. Louise had lived a hard life before we found each other. If she enjoyed a shriek now and then, so be it. There was little enough joy left in our part of the world. After a few minutes of conversation that I could hear inside the house, Denzel came out juggling his own gin and tonic, a fresh one for me and a glass of Chardonnay for the mysterious Ava. His hold on the drinks was precarious, as if he might drop one. He had a little too much weight around the middle, a recent development, though who am I to talk? He gave Ava her drink and introduced himself. Before she could hypnotize him or bore into him with those eyes, I stood, put my drink on a table next to the grill, and shook his hand with a tight, firm grip so that he would know my spirits were up. Did you vote, I asked. Hell yeah, he said, smirking, used to my tactics. I could tell you who he voted for in my sleep. The world has gone to hell in a bushel basket. The weather won't behave itself. The people up here in this part of the world are dying off or driving off. There's unrest, violence, marauders out west, who, like the weather, might show up with a shit show in mind. Some nights, we have armored vehicles parked on the periphery of the neighborhood, special militias paid for by the Homeowners Association. Despite that, Denzel still doesn't carry a gun, which is ungodly behavior. What if a marauder came along and grabbed Letitia by the ass and threw her on the ground? What's he going to do about it without a concealed carry? Somebody I don't like puts their paws on Louise, boom. We didn't talk politics though. We talked sports. We talked food. We talked books. We both like mysteries, the kind they write in Scandinavia, where life is kind of good and all the people are treated mostly the same, while mass murderers ply their trade, but only in fiction, until a woman with a dragon tattoo or a man with a deep scar across his face snaps them in two. Ava ignored our chatter and stared, twiddling her long-stemmed glass at the awesome oak tree. In profile, she was a stunner. Ava, I mean, not the oak. With the long neck of an Egyptian queen, an aristocratic Roman nose, and décolletage that could slay a man. Her skin was dark, glistening, and I wondered where she came from, where her parents might have been born. Dark skin, blue eyes. The colored tattoos on her upper arms were unreadable hieroglyphs, abstract patterns that reminded me of paint Jackson Pollock might drip on canvas. Her jeans were tight, her sleeveless blouse bright and Latin. There was something otherworldly about her, as if she had arrived in a time machine and might vanish without warning. Louise was inside with Letitia and Bobby, all of them making a tater tots hot dish and a strawberry rhubarb pie to accompany the grass-fed beef and very wild salmon I planned to put on the grill. Maybe Bobby would reveal some Ava scuttlebutt to Louise and Letitia, and Louise might clue me in later if the women didn't keep what they learned to themselves. It was clear to me that Ava would be the prime topic of conversation if she wasn't with us. What's the story with Ava, one of us would say, probably me, though it would be Louise who would tease out of Bobby whatever she knew. They were making pie, but I was the real cook that night. Steak, medium rare on the grill. It's steak that's very lean, lots of protein, easy to overcook. A little charring never hurts a good steak, but those babies are delicate. I got them special at Mike's Meats. Mike knows meat, and I know Mike. The salmon is for Bobby, who's pescatarian. Excuse me. Ava told me she eats anything. Not particular, she said. Food is food. Did I tell you I voted, I said, when the conversation died down? Did my duty? Denzel agreed that it might be good later to watch the results, but the weather was too grand on the deck to go inside, and nobody wanted to be the first to stare into a phone. The clouds were deep and fluffy. If I didn't know better, I'd think they were mountains. The usual haze from the city 20 miles down the interstate had been blown in our direction earlier in the day. City stink, but the wind stayed high and the stink moved on. I heard the kind of beep a truck makes when it backs up. Fred's Trees, the logo said on the truck. There was a picture of a logger with a saw taking down a big one. Park, my neighbor, came out to greet the tree man. That would be Fred, I guessed, though it's possible Fred's Trees was not a one-man operation. It was possible that Fred didn't work alone. In fact, there was another man in the truck with him. The two of them talked for a few minutes. Fred was a very tall black man who wore a bright orange uniform and angled his right hand with his white work glove to indicate to Park something about the tree. I got a funny feeling. If what I thought was about to happen came to pass, I realized that I would have a situation on my hands. I picked up the fresh gin and tonic and drank it fast. What do you think they're doing over there? I said. Looks like a tree's coming down, Denzel said. Is there more blight in the area? Not that I know of, I said. Ava had turned to listen, licking her lips and sipping her wine. They kill trees, don't they? She said in a drone voice. Huh, Denzel frowned. He didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't a tree hugger, that's for sure. But nature was one of his issues, with the seas rising, the heat burning the land, the crazy storms dropping like napalm without warning. I hope they're not taking down that big oak just to improve the view. He read my mind. That was my thought exactly. Let's not jump to conclusions, I said. There are other trees on his property, or maybe they're talking about a trim, some pruning. I heard myself say the words, but I was getting a very bad feeling, a vibe, and could feel anger building to a crescendo. He's a man on his own land, right, Ava said? She's tucked straight hair behind her ears, squeezed her lower lip with 2 fingers. One of her nails was bitten to the quick. You men do what you like on your land, all of you. Isn't that the way it is? I ignored her. You know what, Denzel? I think Park is going to take down that tree. By now we were both frowning and studying the situation as if we were watching a post-apocalyptic movie. Fred, if that's Fred, I said, is there to erase a beautiful bur oak from Park's backyard. Dude, it's his yard, Ava said. It's his tree. It's a great tree, no doubt. He should leave it unless it's diseased. That's not for you to decide. None of your damn business. Hell with that, I said, though I tried to soften my tone to placate the mysterious Ava. How many oaks like that are left in the world? Plenty, she said. You'd be surprised. Is that a bigot speaking, I said. She startled, as if struck. Dude, she said, stick it up your ass. Who the fuck do you think you are? She went on like that. She had a bee in her bonnet. I ignored the rant, though Denzel was scowling, maybe in shock. I thought you were a nature boy, I said to him, tree hugger stuff. That tree has a right to its own existence, like Ava here. Let's you and me go over there and see if we can't save it. He demurred. She's right, his yard. What I figured, didn't have the courage of his convictions. He's gonna rape that tree right in front of us, and this is your response? I was disgusted. Rape, Ava said? Not the right word, dude. Reconsider your vocabulary. I could hear the ladies in the kitchen giggle. Sound carries. White wine, that's what they were drinking. White wine makes for the giggles. Ava heard the laughter, noticed her Chardonnay was gone, stared me a dagger for good measure, and left to join the ladies. She looked a bit sketchy on her feet, but that stare could kill. I sighed and walked across the yard, which was freshly mowed and smelled sweet like wildflowers and clipped grass, a smell so unique that I would remember it if I was on Mars. Our house didn't have trees out back or in front. They had all died from the latest blight. We all lived in a suburb on the western edge of town. Beyond it was farmland, green with young crops. Most of the trees out there were young, unlike the bur oak, which was majestic, the kind of tree that kids can climb, a tree to conjure with. It's the kind of tree that neighbors should worship and spend money to save. My guess is that Park would have sent the tree to an assisted living facility the way his fussy wife did with her mother when the old woman's memory went. But you can't uproot and transplant an old oak the way you can a senile old woman. Hey, I shouted, Park! He turned from Fred, if the tree's man's name was actually Fred. Fred had a clipboard in one hand and a pencil in the other. He was so tall that I wondered if he'd played basketball in his gone days. What I realized as I put it all together while closing the rest of the distance between us is that they were talking about logistics. Old Park didn't want the tree falling on his house after it was cut. Gerald, Park said. I put a friendly hand on his shoulder. He's a small man, Asian. I tower over him like a medieval knight in armor, come a-calling, though Fred's height puts me to shame. I couldn't help but notice, Park, I said, as friendly as a man selling insurance. You seem to be contemplating doing something to this magnificent bur oak that all of your neighbors love to death. Park shrugged my hand away and moved a few steps to one side so that Fred stood between him and me. This gentleman is here to cut it down today. His name is Fred. Have you met him? I could tell that he was determined to be polite. I nodded at Fred up there above me. That's not going to happen, I said. I pointed to the tree. That lady is no tramp. I heard somebody call my name and turned to stare at my deck. My wife, Letitia, stood there with a spatula in one hand and Denzel by her side with his arms crossed. She waved the spatula as if it was a wand. Get your fat ass back here is what she was saying. Fire up the grill. Stay out of his business. Bobby and Ava, glasses of Chardonnay in hand, clinked them together. Louise pointed to the grill and squatted down next to it to turn on the propane. Letitia was lying in a lounge chair with her head rolled back to take in the last of the day's sun, which had come out from hiding. Ava walked toward me. Was she an emissary from Louise? Your wife has the right idea, Park said. I'm within my rights. The tree has to go. It occludes my view and its roots could damage my foundation. He was polite. There was no combativeness in his voice. I agree it's a nice tree. If we could dig it up and let you have it, we would do so. Can't be done. Park, have you ever read Pliny? I said. He frowned. Pliny? I think I've heard the name, but no. The answer is no. You haven't read him? That's right. Let me share with you something Pliny once wrote. They called him Pliny the Elder. Wisdom in that last word. This is what he said. An object in possession seldom retains the same charm as it had in pursuit. Park blinked, trying to puzzle it out. Fred, with his clipboard, watched us argue the way a coach at a game studies the cat and mouse combat on the court. He looked at his watch. Park noticed. This is all very amusing, he said, but this man here is on a schedule to keep. He motioned for the clipboard and pencil and scrawled a signature on the paper. That gives him permission to work. One of his associates is sitting in the truck and will help with the job. You don't understand, I said. That tree is not coming down. It belongs to all of us in the neighborhood, not just to you. I love that tree. I've lived with it for years, before you bought this house. This tree is not yours to cut down. Ava came up beside Park. Dudes, she said, dudes, can't we talk this out? Can't we just get along? I could hear that she was imitating somebody. She squeezed the narrow bridge of her nose. A tree like this should be treasured. She was a little drunk, or a lot drunk. Hello, Park said politely. Your host is making a fuss about something that's none of his business. If he doesn't back off, I'm going to call the constabulary. Possession is 9/10 of the law, Park? Is that what you're saying? No, Gerald, I'm saying possession is all of the law, everything. The constabulary, Ava said, tasting the quaint word. She closed in on Park and whispered something to him that I couldn't hear. He squinted. This was none of her business, he was thinking. Fred up there in the clouds didn't look none too happy about the delay. A glance passed like radar between him and Park. Did you vote, Park, I said? That stopped him. None of your business, Gerald. Fred had his signature. That was enough for him. He and his co-worker carried a ladder to the tree. They had ropes, pulleys, other paraphernalia required in the tree cutting business. We all took a brief break from our conversation to watch them install the pulley and rope with an anchor hammered into the ground so that the tree, when it fell, would fall away from the house. Park, I said again. You voted? You didn't say. Ava shivered. She looked sketchy again, hugging herself and squeezing as if her blood wasn't pumping through her body right. Dudes, this is macho bullshit. She turned again to Park. Park, if I may, why not take a night to think it over? Not a bad idea, I said. It was indeed a smart thing for her to say, but I could tell she was edgy with the standoff. I thought she might be about to blow. I thought it might be interesting if I saw what that looked like. Whatever it was, her sensible words or her impatient tone, it hit Park the wrong way. He set his mouth in a scowl. What if you were big with child, he said to Ava, ignoring me, and didn't want the baby? What if a man who didn't own your body made you learn that he could tell you what to do, make you keep the baby? Would you like that, lady? I could see her face turn pale, as if the blood was being siphoned from it. A bad memory, I thought. In fact, a law that would do exactly that was on the ballot. Oh, dude, she said, this is your house, your land. I get that. You can murder that fucking tree for all I care. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Fuck a duck while you're at it. She twerked her pelvis as if fucking. I get that too. Way of the world and all that shit. Then you can see it die all over again at night in your dreams. You know how awful that is to watch something you've killed die over and over again every goddamn night? Lady, I say again, you would do to me and my land what men do to women and their bodies. He walked away and pulled out his phone, the local constabulary, as if they don't have enough to keep them occupied in these times. I knew some of the local cops. Which one would come? If it was Peter Pumpkin Eater, I called him to his face, there might be trouble. There had been some trouble with Peter in the past. He and I had once come to blows. I couldn't remember over what. Nothing, actually. Nothing at all. I walked over to Park. Once he shut down the phone, I told him that voting was a sacred rite of passage for real Americans. What you mean by that, Park said. Take it how you want. I stepped close, inside his personal space. No damage done yet to that magnificent oak. Why not stop? Fred climbed the ladder to lop off some of the tree's branches. The point of no return was fast approaching. Ava spoke to me. Dude, he's right. She finished her wine like water, stared at her glass as if she couldn't believe it was empty, and tossed it at Park's feet like a bouquet of flowers. She stared down at it. I can't believe I did that, she said. Macho bullshit. Macho, I said. This tree is a wise woman. Nothing macho about that. How does your wife put up with your crap, Ava said. Bobby tells me she might be leaving you soon. She smirked when she saw me taken aback. I knew it was a lie. As if on cue, Bobby and Louise, like cyborgs on batteries, hailed me from the deck. Louise flipped her head to get a loop of hair out of her line of sight, motioned with her glass of wine, calling me back from the brink. Many nights, she and I, pickled with booze, argued for hours about anything that came to mind. Big Jer, she would say, you're mentally ill. It was our kind of fun. She had the right to call me out. The mysterious Ava did not. Ava pulled her hair back behind her head into a ponytail. She looked dazed. This isn't your fight, I said. Why don't you go wait with Denzel and the ladies? But Denzel approached without me seeing him and now stood beside me. Dude, he said, mocking Ava. It's his damn yard. It's his tree. Let it be. Ava hummed a song under her breath, a ditty I could almost remember from the gone days. The gin in my brain was making me hear an echo, a refrain, as if the earth itself vibrated between my feet. I swear to God, I'm not a violent man. Not by any means, but I wanted to punch her goddamn lights out. Denzel too. Get thee all to a nunnery, I said, mocking them both. Either you're in this fight to the end or you're not. Not, Ava said. Denzel shrugged. I washed my hands of it, Gerald. Also, we're all getting hungry. Hey, Park, I called as if the Asian were half a block away. You didn't tell me if you voted. Did you vote? And how did you vote? As a feminist, I want to know if you believe a woman has the right to choose. Ava turned to Denzel. This asshole, he's your buddy. None of your business, Park said. This is still the United States, Gerald. Are you sure about that, I said? Have you been paying attention lately?
No.
Should I stop about there? I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
I think it was scary.
Thank you for that scary dystopian story that we're all living. So this is the time that we pass the basket around. This is also a tradition of Midstream, since the church lets us use this room. We try to give them back a little bit of something. So if you have anything you want to add, that's great. And next month will be hosted by Richard Terrell, and the writers are Walter Cannon, Lissa Torres, National Poetry Series winner Michael Torres, and Connie Wanek. So you can join us then.
What's the date?
That would be whatever the second Thursday of December is. What is that?
Oh, it'll come in the
12.
Might be the 12th, yeah, that sounds right. So December 12th, please come. Wonderful writers there. So our next reader is Lora Robinson. Lora Robinson is a queer poet from the East Coast. She's a poetry reader for Cobra Milk and The Avenue, an alumnus of Art Farm, Nebraska, and a writing mentor with the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. Her debut collection, An Essential Melancholy, is available now through Akanoga Press. Please welcome Lora Robinson.
Thank you for inviting me, Diane. It's nice to see everybody tonight. Thanks for my friends for coming out.
Might get a little closer to the mic.
Is that better? Okay, thank you. My mother's always telling me to speak up. What's up, Laura?
Speak up.
Okay. Sorry, Mom. I'm going to start with a few poems from my first collection, An Essential Melancholy. I have copies here tonight, and I'll talk more about that at the end of my session. This book is about my experiences as a survivor of domestic violence. I will only do a few from there. I'm going to really bring the mood down and kind of build us back up a little bit before the end.
Can you talk louder, please?
Sure, I'm so sorry.
Tell me again what the book is about.
My experiences as a survivor of domestic violence.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay. This first one is called Forgiveness or Something Like It. It's the first poem in the book. So yeah, Forgiveness or Something Like It. I am trying to forgive. What I mean is, I am trying to stop grinding my teeth until my molars dent under their own pressure. I'm trying to undream them smashing open into a viscous river. I'm trying to disappear the nights of counting bruises, packed go bags, the permanent thumbprint on my friend's trachea, a shadow in the gravel alley, the distinctions between threat and actionable offense. I am trying to leave the man who collaged our family portraits on the back door of the safe house, who siphoned me into a minuscule paper cup and called it purified. What I mean is, separate us by oceans, exile him to the island of his brethren, of every limp thing that thought they could drain a woman dry. This next one's called The Siren Sings of the Hanged Maidens, or as Michael calls it, the one where the women kill the men. It's based on a lot of Greek mythology. I grew up with a lot of it, so it's in a lot of my work. The Siren Sings of the Hanged Maidens. Four-leafed, blue-eyed, reptilian-brained, the snake in his mouth. He would call her Echo, torn in half by a beautiful boy, scorned and reduced to the emptying air. He would call her Daphne, chased into earthly translation, consecrated and burned, bowed into laurels for the victor and his spoils. He would call her Pasiphae, horned and bull-headed, bending over for the beast in the construct of Poseidon's curse, a polluted lover and a child too carnivorous to lullaby, to nurse, to name. But I am mother to no monster. Oh no. No mortal hubris, no aperture for wrath or subjugation. I am dark mirror, familial tapestry of cowering fauna and hanged maidens. I am silk noose, slit throat, silver peel of memory. I am God has spoken, a dangerous truth, haunting his odyssey home, wailing till he runs aground. I love the Tale of the Sirens because it just proves that women can never have hobbies without men totally ruining them. All right.
I hadn't thought of it that way. I see your point.
This next one's called Obeyed for August, or Abad. I don't know, the internet still can't tell me how to pronounce it correctly. I tried so hard. Abad. Abad for August.
Nice.
This morning I woke clinging to your collar before the veil lifted and you were gone again, melting crystalline, a broken fever. Once, though you forced my hand, I thought to reach through the veil and snatch a soul from raw oblivion and into some kind of warmer hollow. I woke again, fuller, multitudinous, carrying petals and pomegranates to your feet. When I watched you wither the fruit and crush every flower between the threshers of your fists, I knew I had descended back to ash, rain, some ruin of earth you could not salt. There is nothing left to touch or remember now. The asters droop in the shadow. The smoke left my hands many years ago. Still on this side I search for you, though I find only glittering stars of bone, dry lightning, the misnamed phenomena of our marriage. And on this morning I wake again, under sheets evacuating wreckage and memory. I smooth the duvet and tuck you back in, a formless future, the heaviest ghost. All right, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit. I am currently working on 2 different collections. I have like a Fiona Apple type pace, so it'll be like 5 years before the next one comes. But the first one I'm gonna read from is called The Architecture of Fire. It's a lot different from my first one. Sex, love, obsession, you know, stuff like that.
Good movie. A good movie.
So the first one is called Contractions. I'm thinking of mouths, the thick filament of tongues pulled closer by sharp inhalation, spinal fulcrums, the gravity of failed vocabulary. I'm thinking of mustaches, goldenrod, the origins of contractions, the way love pours me out and crushes me like an empty can. I'm thinking of his ass and bike shorts, coarse palms, river weather, his silver and slurry twang after 3 Jack and Gingers. I'm thinking of acceleration, fictitious force, the necessary turbulence for valley fog to settle, the abode of our shifting topographies. I'm thinking of the way he tides my body, the brackish melt in his full moon hands, fog rolling, push, pull, pulsing. I don't want you to go, I don't want you to stay. All right, last flight out of Omaha. Build me a fire across the room or between my collarbones, the young glue of your tectonic joints holding high architecture. Tell me you love me, even in approximations. How closely I brim with the lips you touch, bare skin rolling in grasses. Turn me over, a haunting equation. Solve my humming, the burning brush that blows through so much chaos and order in the golden angles, in the sacred geometry of our mouths. Please, architect of fire, ask me to stay. Show me the familiar spaces and your light in between. It found me again. Love was a smoke trap I did not imagine, but then how could I imagine you? All instinct and human, and sketching circles around this moonless night. I am charcoal tipped, drawn and spiraling, so lost and still just as human. Please, architect of my fires, ask me to stay. Let our soft magnet bodies flex with the current of our hands, flint fingers igniting what is left of the secrets that hold us separate and searing. A confluence of bodies cresting their histories to the surface, granular palimpsests in the rutted riverbed you trudge barefoot under the hunter's moon with me in tow, doe-eyed and unraveling in your opaque surround, lucid dreaming that I could be less liminal and conflicted and all at once. My architect, my fire, what is left holds us, silhouettes of milkweed and night heron, flakes of ash we scrape from our teeth, the rolling river tugging its covers back over frosting shoulders, me on the last flight out of Omaha, a parallax vapor trail, every door swinging endlessly, banging against the nocturnal enfilade of the nights the fire built and broke us. Alrighty. So my other collection I'm working on is loosely titled "Get Me to a Nunnery." So if you know, you know. And it seems appropriate maybe to read here. So. So we're gonna end on.
Great title.
Yeah, thank you. So we're gonna end with a bunch of those. Yeah, so the first one's called Anticipatory Grief. I tell myself 3 stories. 1, this is something that is never over, but constantly restarting, like the sputtering of your old truck's cast iron engine, turning over and over, surprising even us. 2, I've always been dead, a once charming ghost, a haunting you banished after selling all your mirrors, the disappointing reality of a spooky lover. 3, I made you up entirely, a buck's sentient antler scrape, a sack of broken dishes, the book I read cover to cover and never opened again. All right, this next one is called Breakage, and if you think it's funny like I do, then we can probably be friends. So just know that, yeah, this is what you're gonna get. Breakage. I binge watch Intervention. Is that an addiction? The only cosmic irony is that the stars die long before they hear us compliment their glittering gowns. Someone remastered the Exploding Whale video for its golden anniversary. So shouldn't I be able to find a Scorpio boyfriend on Bumble? I love scorpions so much, I might as well marry one. The most attractive trait in a man is finding me attractive. The second most, insincerity. My good Catholic boy disdained my mental illness, my favorite movie, the way I worshiped the moon instead of his cock. I resented the way he piled laundry next to the basket, brewed the coffee sour, cast me as a blank-faced final girl, mouth sewn shut in his emotional pornos. Now playing, pretty blonde with daddy issues gets fucked by balding narcissist. You won't believe what happens next.
That's funny.
And now we're going to take it right back down. This is called foxhole conversion. And if anybody's familiar with that, it's the moment where atheists become Christians because they're in a foxhole or in a moment of danger or mortal terror, so they start praying. Foxhole conversion. A neophobic frog boils alive or to death in a Bovril nerve tonic. Most people forever act against their own interest, as if doubt was not another organic compound, a side effect of human vitalism. Have you ever seen an ostrich bury his head in a lion's litter box? Did you ever sit graveside and peel a clementine in one long piece? Have you ever seen the galaxies behind clamped eyes, yanked your naked feet from a dark room? Have you ever disappeared from a life you could not love yourself enough to want? Then you have seen a world without God. This was a last-minute addition, but it seemed appropriate for what's going on in the world right now. It's called cognitive dissonance. Start here. Sprained wrist, a bloodless vein drained like the river's bed or your own. He has gone now to one war or another, and you, woman left behind, in a neutral corner, to sweat beside your pitcher of tea. Write the crosswords in pen, plumb casualty lists for his name. Start again. Rosed eyelids, thorn bush beard, red, red, red. Burn quickly before he holds you like water in his hands. 40 days starts now. Noah came back for you, and so will this arkless bastard. Parading 2 by 2 all the beasts he chose to save, the ones who floated above your ashes, mobiles for your seafloor crib. You're composed of missing children, a waterlogged skeleton, Inner Harbor, Schuylkill River, Killswitch Sally, start over. These children that come at you with knives are your children. You taught them the perils of obedience, the predictability of urbane violence. No one will save us, and the devil has a better cut man. No one will save you, no one will you. Don't start, don't even start with me, just don't. Alright, we have two more. The end of democracy makes me very thirsty. All right, this one's called "The Meaning of Words Will Always Change." Your emptiness has a burning bush in it, and the voice of a strange man, always more trustworthy than your mother's or mine. Your emptiness has a pomegranate in it, a nuclear core, leaching enriched beer. Your emptiness has a radio host in it, a financial podcast, debt-free screeching the privileges of morality. Your emptiness has an espresso machine, a walnut knockbox, and a abridged version of my favorite novel. Your emptiness has an unpacked box, two actually, maybe a third I can't recall, half full of batteries and bondage rope you bought on lunch break. Your emptiness is a landscape photographer, a confirmation bias, has the Eucharist memorized. Your emptiness has half an acre contractor gray with 4 snowblowers and a padlock shed full of dirt. Your emptiness has an electric complex and a white bull and the image of your father. Your emptiness has rollover vacation days, puts the S in usefulness and the utility in futility. Your emptiness is a self-portrait as failed compost, is a city that was always more mine than yours. Your emptiness is not a kingdom, now come. Your emptiness honors no God, won't teach you to swim in the belly of the beast. Your emptiness can't remember its dream either. Your emptiness has fallen asleep. Don't forget to kiss it goodnight. Right, this is the last one. I wrote this very recently on an airplane and in an airplane lounge. So I was very tired. Hopefully it makes sense. Because there are no conjunctions in dreams. I dreamed I lived in an old brick building and stopped loving cruel men and settled down with an honest one. I boarded a plane bound for the middle of the Pacific, and just when I thought we would crash, we didn't. I dreamed I was old. Time flattened me under its hooves before I fell through the eye of a needle, and I was finally fluent in French, and I wrote a book every year. I drove myself to the store for fresh lemons and stopped and stared at the stoplight until I dreamed. I unburied my body and I was young, so young. It was just a second ago, then 2, then 200, then, and then I woke up in the middle of my life and cruelly could not remember how I got here or when my lungs turned to wet sandpaper. I dreamed the night I stopped loving, and the stars spelled out nothing, death, and forever. I did not speak in riddles, did not ask for more than the glowing craters of your hands, as the cicadas hissed like deflating tires, and I did not pull up my hood to hide cigarette smoke suffusing through my hair. I dreamed I was torn in half like a pre-cut phone book, and the pieces of me pirouetted in the wind, and the pieces of me returned my brother's calls. I dreamed I was future, perfect, tense, and all the things I would have mourned became a bridge, became a translucent linen shroud of what might have killed me. I'm actually taking donations. I am doing a cross-country ski next February, and I'm doing it as a fundraiser for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. My father was diagnosed with Parkinson's early last year, so I have a fundraising goal. So if you donate to that, equal to, or maybe if you're feeling generous, greater than the value of the book, you know, this is your NPR tote bag. Thank you so much. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you so much, Lora. I wanted to hear all of those amazing poems about unburying the body. It was really amazing. And my father had Parkinson's, so I really understand what that's about. So thank you all for coming tonight. It meant a lot to see you all. I think we all need this kind of community at this time, and it's much appreciated. So we often, as another tradition of this reading, is to all go to, whoever wants to go to Sweeney's and hang out for a little bit and have something to drink. So please join us, but here we have these amazing writers, and you have chances. This is about buying books. I'm a firm believer in that, and I hope that you'll come and look at them and purchase them. And thank you so much, and come again in December. It's great to see you guys.